Today I'm here to share with you the best and newest support Barbarian build inside of Diablo Immortal. This one's brought to me by Try, part of the Revenant's Discord server, which will be linked in the description of this video. As you can see in this footage right here, this build completely melts opponents, and right now doing that in the Temple of Namari. What I plan to do inside of this video is share with you the gameplay of the melting happening, then take you through the build, and then share with you the in-depth notes that Try shared with me on how to optimize this build so you know exactly what each piece is doing, and some tips and tricks along the way. Along with me sharing that and reading that to you, I'll be leaving his notes in the description of this video so you can check them out for yourself. But as Sargoth goes down, we're gonna go take a look at the build itself and kind of go through it piece by piece. We're gonna start off with the secondary gear, which is being used a little bit differently than we've seen in the past. Vithus Urges is the 4-piece set that we're gonna start off with right here. Increases the duration of all beneficial effects on you or your party members by 30%. That's what we typically use, but he's going a step further and going with a 4-piece set, increases the target's attack speed by 30% for 3 seconds, making your teammates attack 30% more quickly. Each time you use a skill to grant a beneficial effect to yourself or to a party member. All right, so that's 4 of the 6 pieces. Now check this out, because this one right here is different than anything we've used before. Banquet of Eyes, damage dealt to enemies suffering from your continual damage effects increased by 15%. So continuously dropping more damage and a faster attack speed on your opponents by both you and your party members, which is very, very important. Now let's see the legendary effect here of the first legendary piece of gear, the Battlemasters Helm. War Cry. Demoralize is replaced with a War Cry that increases all damage you and your nearby allies inflict. Demoralize cooldown is reduced by 7.2%, and he has this piece of gear Awakened, reducing cooldown by another 10% in addition to that. So that's a big part in the beginning portion of this build. Moving on to 5 Fresh Claws. This one right here is one that I currently like using. Whirlwind now sheds armor, increasing all damage enemies take by 2%, stacking up to 5 times. The energy consumption of Whirlwind is also reduced by 3.6%, and as you can see, he has this piece of gear Awakened as well, which means that the Whirlwind energy consumed is 10% slower, which is nice as well. You're going to get more bang for your buck out of Whirlwind, which is an essential for any Barbarian. And if you're noticing some of the gems he's using along the way, you could see that as well. There are definitely some 1 and 2 stars in here. So far, this is a 1. The first 2 were 2 stars. Here we have Hell's Legacy. Sprint leaves a trail of flames, dealing 8,000 damage to enemies over 4 seconds. Decreased damage increased by 90%. Sprint cooldown is decreased by 10% because that piece of gear is Awakened. I use the same piece in my Inferno Barbarian or Leapfrog Barbarian build, another one that has been shared here on the channel. Now, this piece, Swiftwing, uses the Blessed Pebble, and he really felt that this was an important gem to use here. I believe he actually took out Seeping Bile to use this gem. He replaced a 5-star gem with a 1-star, and this one, Stampede, now also increases movement speed of nearby allies. Sprint cooldown is reduced by 7.2%, and then another 10% on top of that because the gear was Awakened. Essentially, he can sprint all the time, completely throughout his whole time playing as a Barbarian. He can continuously sprint. There is literally no downtime. All right, now what we're having over here coming in is Updraft. Whirlwind now draws on the power of the wind to deal increased damage while no longer reducing your movement speed. Whirlwind damage is increased by 18%, and because it's Awakened, the energy consumed is 10% slower. Again, everything buffing Whirlwind right here, making it just insanely strong. And if you don't have Bitterwind, it's essentially a must use for the Barbarian because your Whirlwind goes so fast. It doesn't slow your attack down by any means, and it's just super speedy and essentially a must use if you're a Barbarian. Now, the secondary piece of gear is Dishonored Blade. He's using the Mother's Lament gem in another Awakened slot right here. And as we're going to see in just a moment, he'll break down exactly. Demoralize duration is increased by 39%, and the cooldown is decreased because it's awakened by an additional 10%. Now, the gems that he's kind of pausing on here, we're going to get into a little bit more depth in his explanation of how this whole build works. The legendary attribute of Lunatic Twin is when Frenzy is fully stacked, each attack unleashes 3,600 damage to all enemies in front of you. Cannot occur more often than every 0.4 seconds. Damage is increased by 90%. This piece here has not been awakened. It's got a 5-star gem in there. Now he's got the Blood-Soaked Jade in this one. The last one had the Bottled Hope. This is a level 7 Blood-Soaked Jade. And here, Frenzy increases damage you deal to that enemy by 6% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 30% increase. Frenzy damage is increased by also 90%. And if you want to take a look right here at the skills that he's using, we'll pause it and you can see that he's going with Demoralize. And this is going to decrease the attack of the enemies on you by 30% for 6 seconds. Then he's got Sprint, Whirlwind, of course. He's attacking with Frenzy, and he's using Sunder, which is going to increase the damage that you do and that your party does for 30 seconds. While by 30%, I'm sorry, for 6 seconds. So the enemies are going to do 30% less damage to you for 6 seconds because of Demoralize, and you're going to do 30% more damage for 6 seconds because of Sunder. Now, what I want to share with you guys is just how this build actually works. So let's come on over here and look at some gameplay as he does some Helliquary battles. Watch how he goes through these Helliquary bosses with this build. But not only him, it's about how he's buffing his party. That's really what this build is about, and he actually compared it to the Crusader with Holy Banner, saying that this is an even better build than that, with how it just makes your enemies just get melted, as we saw in the beginning of the video with Temple of Damari. Now, he put together a pretty in-depth description of how this build works. That's something that I want to share with you guys right now. I'm going to also try to remember my best to share this in text in the description of this video, along with the link to his Discord server. So he describes the mechanics. This is primarily for raids or dungeons only, and makes the Barb way better as a team player. We actually don't have Wrath of the Berserker here, and that's okay. We still make use of the burn on Sprint from Hell's Legacy and can keep it up 100% of the time. I mentioned that earlier on in the video. A lot of that's because of the Awakened gear. This allows us to make use of the Pain class gem, the 2-piece banquet set, and allows for constant firestorm crits from Whirlwind with the Bitterwind primary piece of gear, dealing wind damage. On top of that, we're also using Swiftwing pants to turn Sprint into a party buff. This means everyone's going to get that benefit from Sprint. This not only gives allies your speed boost to help speed up any dungeon, but because we're buffing allies using the 4-piece vithus, this will also give all allies and yourself a 30% attack speed boost with each use of Sprint as well. So far, this is looking pretty awesome how it's being built out, and I love his description. Frenzy is applying a buff, a self buff, only adding up to 5 stacks with Oncoming Brutality, up to a maximum of 30% damage increased. You can also use Lunatic Twin to make Frenzy hit all enemies in front of you, or alternately Riddlerue to give Frenzy an attack speed boost on crit. Hopefully you're able to follow this. I know it can get kind of confusing sometimes. Sunder, of course, has no legacy essences yet, but the basic skill effect alone applies a 30% armor break to all enemies hit. This stacks with the armor break effect using Whirlwind with the 5 fresh claws, as we mentioned, max 10%, and even the 15% from the ironbane gem as well. That was the yellow 2-star. Lastly, Demoralize makes use of the Battlemasters Helm to give all allies a 25% damage buff, thus activating the 4-piece vithus attack speed bonus again, and also Dishonored Blade to increase the duration. And he even tells us they're melted so fast he skips something. I missed the rest of the text. Alright, so for gameplay that we're watching right here, for the most part we just keep refreshing Sprint as soon as we can, keeping the burn on, speed boost for all, and applying 30% attack speed boost for short durations each time with the 4-piece of vithus. Channel Whirlwind in between sprint casts, keeping the armor break from the 5 fresh claws up, but also keep interrupting Whirlwind to use Frenzy once every 5 seconds or so to keep your damage buff from Oncoming Brutality at max stacks. Save Sunder for elite packs to allow teammates to melt them fast. Save Demoralize for longer fights where mobs continuously spawn, or on bosses to really speed up your clear times. Altogether, this buff allows 55% armor break, 30 Sunder, 15 ironbane, and 10 5 fresh claws. 30% attack speed for all party members, and 25% damage buff for all party members. These can also be active at the same time as well to really drop a boss fast. This is what we've been seeing. Should also note that the armor break is a debuff applied to the enemy, so anything that deals damage to it is then increased. It doesn't affect my 4-man party. It doesn't just affect my 4-man party, boosts the damage dealt by all 8 members in raids and literally everyone at a world boss in the open world, which is pretty darn sick. You're talking about 8 people that can get the buff in these Heliquaries, one of those being yourself. And he gives us some tips as well. To make the build even better, you want as much reduced cooldown as you can on sprint and demoralize. This is done primarily through the awakening of the shoulder slot and pants slot for sprint, and or the head slot and the offhand slot for Dishonored Blade in it for demoralize. These all give 10% reduced cooldown for each respectively. Bottled Hope is also slightly useful here, as its secondary effect also reduces all skilled cooldowns by a minor percentage. Keep in mind, Demoralize is a 30-second cooldown, which is a pretty long one, guys. So each of those 10% reductions cuts it by 3 seconds. You can also awaken the chest and Bitterwind slots to reduce the energy consumption on Whirlwind. With the increased attack speed from Vithus, you'll burn through it fast. Trickshot Gem might even be a necessity here, and will be a nice, easy 1-star gem to get to rank 10, which I agree with it is, to awaken something that you need. It's important to always be able to Whirlwind when you need to keep your stacks of the 5 fresh claws. Highly recommend 1-star Blessed Pebble. I mentioned this as we were looking as well here. Not only is it increasing every beneficial effect, sprint speed, Vithus attack speed, demoralize damage buff, frenzy damage buff, bottled hope damage buff, and Mother's Lament crit chance, it also a 1-star gem that's fairly easy to rank up to 10 to allow for those slots mentioned above to be awakened. His sprint lasts for 8 seconds with the cooldown of 7, so it's 100% uptime with 1 second overlap. His demoralize lasts 14 seconds with a 21-second cooldown, which is a 67% uptime. But more importantly, being able to cast these more often means activating attack speed boost from Vithus more often as well. So I think we're getting to see here really how he thinks about putting this build together. One, it's all about speed, and it's all about crit and enhancing everything that the build is created for through the gems that he uses and the awakening of slots. Really, it's about a team build, whether it's a team of 4 in the open world, a team of 8, or in dungeons, I should say, a team of 8 in Heliquary, or in the open world with as many as you can get. It's a great Barbarian build when you're looking to play a support role while dropping massive damage and taking down bosses insanely fast, as you've been seeing as I'm going through and sharing these notes with you from Try himself. I love the Barbarian. I left the Blood Knight after a few weeks of trying it to come back to the Barbarian, and I'm really happy that I did. It's really cool to be a Barbarian. I do miss the healing elements that we had inside of the Blood Knight, and I kind of miss the spawning that I get out of the Necro, but for the Barbarian, I'm a Barb guy. This build is sick, and I can't wait to actually put it together myself and get you some gameplay of that as well. Hope you enjoyed this video, and try this one out for yourself. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And remember to subscribe if you enjoyed the video or found it useful. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.